So, if I had my choice of anyone to interview in the whole world, it would probably be you.
Oh, my goodness.
And I'm not saying that because I need a vote or anything, because I don't. I'm saying it because you've lived one of the most extraordinary lives of anyone I know. And we got to know each other some years ago. I didn't know your full story at the time. I know a little bit more now. But I've always respected you as being well ahead of your time. And no surprise that, almost 20 years with Goldman Sachs, now on the Meta board, Deputy National Security Advisor, effectively ran the Presidential Personnel Office, and all from unsuspecting origins. An immigrant into this country, from Egypt originally, as I recall. And you've lived the American dream.
Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Dina Powell McCormick, now married to Senator David McCormick from the great state of Pennsylvania. I don't know who ranks higher, you or David, but you're both very accomplished. I walked down the stairs a moment ago, and I said, I'm going to be interviewing Dina. And the person said, she's my hero.
Oh.
And I said, what question would you want me to ask her? And she said, I want to know if she has a mentor today. Mm-hmm. So this book, Who Believes in You, chronicles some amazing journeys, story by story. And I thought that was an appropriate question, Dina.
Mm-hmm. It's a great one. Well, Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for moderating this panel, for Mastercard and inviting me. I have to say that was such a nice introduction. I wish our 6 daughters had heard it. I have to tell you, start with six daughters between us. A funny story I'll start with is I was so honored to have Secretary Condi Rice, who's a huge admirer of yours, of course, and Sheryl Sandberg hosted an event for the book at Stanford last week. And I was on the way, and I really was, so honored. Condi's a huge mentor of mine, and Sheryl has done so much, obviously, in the mentoring space. And one of our daughters called me and said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to a talk with Condi Rice and Sheryl Sandberg. And she said, what are they talking about? And I said, no, I'm participating in it. And she said, why? So it's very nice, and your children do keep you grounded. I had the privilege of working with Ambassador Huntsman almost all the years of the Bush administration. There are really very few leaders in our country that have been placed in the most critical countries at the most critical times. You don't just get placed as ambassador to China, ambassador to Russia for not just 2 presidents on different sides of the aisle. So I want to thank you for your service to our country.
You're either really smart or really dumb.
No. or you're making a
and
huge...
probably because nobody else would take it.
You're making a huge impact, so thank you.
So a lot of our discussion has been around, and Shamina was up here this morning framing it brilliantly. I mean, the reason for us being gathered here, a focus, among other things, on financial health. And we do it globally, here domestically, but globally through a lot of Mastercard programs. The thing I love about Mastercard is it's doing well by doing good. Not a mantra, but a lifestyle that really animates everybody who's associated with the company. It's why I love it. But financial health would imply access to capital, financial literacy, access to new commercial networks. And implicit in all of that, as you climb the ladder, say a young entrepreneur, implicit in all of that is you have to be inspired. You have to have the human connection at some level that brings you the ideas, that moves you and motivates you. So let's talk about mentorships.
Yeah.
Because we don't talk about that enough. And I suspect that everybody tuned into this program has been touched by a mentor. And if they haven't, I highly recommend it. But you also flip it around and say, and we should be work at being mentors as well, I mean, throughout life. So tell us how this concept turned into a book.
It didn't start out as a book. Dave and I, as I said, had our 6 daughters with us a lot of the time during COVID, and we realized that beyond missing high school graduations and prom, they miss 3 of the most important years of human connectivity. When you get your first mentor and your first boss. And guess what? You can't be mentored over Zoom. And so we realized that we wanted to inspire a new generation to understand the value of mentoring. We certainly would not be where we are today without a couple of people who believed in us. But most importantly, they saw something in us we would never have seen in ourselves. In my case, born in Cairo, Egypt, small Coptic Christian community. My family immigrated to Dallas when I was 5 years old. I didn't speak English. I learned English quickly because I was young. Texan took me a lot longer. There was a lot of culture shock. And growing up, I had parents who, of course, were my first mentors. They worked many jobs, so the 3 of us, my 2 sisters and I, could pursue our dreams. And when I was waitressing my way through the University of Texas in Austin, I met Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison, the only senior woman I'd ever seen in a role in Texas, in a government role. And she said, you know what, you're really talented. Why don't you defer law school and come work with me in Washington for 1 year? And I said, oh my God, Senator, that would be a dream. But there's one problem. Since I was a little girl, my parents used to say to me, we left our homeland, our church, everything, so you and your sisters could pursue your dreams and be anything you wanted to be as long as you're a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. And this is not going to fit in that plan, even though I'd love to do it. And I'll never forget what she told me. She said, Dina, if you don't take a risk on yourself, no one will ever take a risk on you. And to the chagrin of my parents, I deferred law school. I went to Washington, and I tell that story because without that, I would have never met Ambassador Huntsman. I would never have had the privilege of working for 2 presidents, and I would have never had, a 16-year career at Goldman Sachs. And so she saw something and also saw something I needed to take a risk on, a little bit like what Jenny was talking about earlier. And it's a lot harder for women to take risks, especially when everyone in their life is saying, take the safe route. So she had an enormous impact on me and is really the reason I eventually worked, of course, for Secretary Rice, too, who's a big chapter in the book.
Well, and we'll have maybe a minute to get into that. But in your book, Dina, you talk about why authenticity and lived experience matters as much as titles or credentials. You're very kind to call me ambassador, but everybody around the office just knows I'm plain old dumb John. We don't do titles. But I thought that was a profound statement, and I just wanted you to build on that a little bit more.
Well, we actually did a study with the Yale School of Management as part of the book. There really hadn't been a big study on does mentorship work, what are the traits that matter. 2,200 young adults participated, and what came through was this yearning for mentorship right now, but not what you would call transactional mentoring. Can you help me get a job interview, nominate me for something? All of that's so important. The word that people kept using was transformational mentoring. Can you help me build the values that will help me become a great leader in whatever I'm doing, and more of a transformational mentor for my whole life? And what also came through was, yes, it is the investment in time, telling me, giving me good feedback, helping me. But let me also have experiences with mentors that I can shadow. For me, Secretary Condi Rice was after 9/11. We'd actually been at the White House on 9/11. I started working with her on issues around the Middle East, eventually becoming Assistant Secretary of State. And I'll never forget seminal moments of being with her by the sheer osmosis of learning what it's like to be a leader from someone like her. My favorite story was we were in the Middle East in a major capital at one of those grand palaces that you've been to many times, and she was having a meeting with the head of state. And he looked over at her and he said, Madam Secretary, thank you so much for coming, but I hope you didn't come here to preach to me about freedom and democracy. Without missing a beat, Secretary Rice looked at him and said, Your Highness, how could I come here and preach to you about anything when my own country, not that long ago, counted my ancestors as 3/5 of a man? But today, you are looking at the first Black female Secretary of State of the United States of America. And while we are not perfect in America, we are on an imperfect journey and listening to the will of our people. And that is why we will always be stronger than you. And so in one fell swoop, she kind of slapped him around and made the point with such poise and fierceness and humility. So a big part of what we talk about in the book is the incredible honor it is and privilege to sometimes be a fly on the wall and how much you learn in that moment. And she gave a lot of access to that.
We all have Condi moments.
Yeah, you have a lot too.
Yours. It's fantastic. While serving as governor in Utah, and when she was Secretary of State, she came to give a speech in Salt Lake City, Utah, and came to the governor's mansion where we were living, lucky enough to live. The grand piano on the top floor.
Oh, wow.
My daughter's a pianist, and she studied, worked to do Rachmaninoff's Second Concerto. We invited Condi up to listen. And she sat, Secretary of State. She didn't have to be with us. She had 1,000 other things to do. And the tears started coming down her. The music moved her to that extent.
It does.
So let's talk about something else that moves at least some of us. When you have someone come up to you and say, "You mattered in my life. I learned something from you. You were a mentor at some stage in my life." When that is spoken, those are enormously moving words, like we do anything that anybody would want to emulate or pattern their lives after. So for those in the audience and maybe listening online who may be thinking doubtfully, I'll never be a mentor. I could never do that. My life isn't perfect or illustrious enough to shape somebody else's life. Yet it is, because everyone's life is special.
So special, and the point of the book, interestingly enough, even though it's the stories of famous people, Satya Nadella, Condi Rice, Tory Burch, Brian Grazer, it's actually meant to be about the people you've never heard of, the people that we wouldn't have had the impact of those leaders' lives without. High school coaches, university professors. And we hope that when people read the book or go to whobelievedinu.com, they'll ask themselves 3 questions. Who believed in you? Have you thanked them? Christine Lagarde in the book very tearfully says, there was this woman who believed in me and she died suddenly and I never really thanked her for changing my life. So thank your mentors. And the third is, who can you believe in? The truth is, investing in one person can have that much of an impact. You know, for years at the Goldman Sachs Foundation, we were very big partners with the Mastercard Foundation, all around inclusive growth. We partnered together to economically empower female entrepreneurs around the world through a program called 10,000 Women. And what was amazing is even though our partnership provided them with access to capital, which female entrepreneurs desperately need, and we know that, business education, which they wouldn't have ever really been able to access, the thing that mattered the most was the mentoring and business advising. I have a friend here who helped me with that program. And the truth is, what we learned is that mentoring is code for confidence building. Somebody who says to you, you can do it. And I'll give you 2 stories of women that we worked with through the Mastercard Foundation that just taught me no matter where you are, your station in life, somebody giving you confidence is going to be transformative. The first is a woman in Egypt who owned a car company called Pink Taxi. Her name is Reem Fauzi. She started a company covertly, hiding it from her husband, because she saw a need for drivers, female drivers, for female passengers in Egypt that sadly has a sexual assault problem. And she started by buying a car, and we found this woman, and she went into the 10,000 Women program. She kept hiding this from her husband because she was sure he would divorce her. And as she started making more money, she actually finally told him how much she was making. And we told her, please keep going, you're doing great. Today, he is the CFO reporting to her. And Uber wants to buy the car. I'll close with the story that, you know, a few of us really, to this day, it moves us. We did work in Afghanistan. We ended up working with 400 female entrepreneurs. It really breaks my heart to see, frankly, how far back women in Afghanistan and girls in Afghanistan have gone today. The woman that stood out owned a company called Kandahar Treasures. This woman, Rangina Hamidi, would go to the most conservative parts of the country and Taliban-controlled areas. She would go into the homes of these women who weren't allowed to leave their homes and take handicraft that they had made, rugs, jewelry, scarves, sell them, and bring back proceeds. Very little, but proceeds to the women every month. She told us a story of being in Bamyan, and that one day she went to give the proceeds to this woman who had never left her home, literally. And the woman grabbed her hand and said, Rangina, my husband has never respected me. My husband has never asked my opinion on any matter. Ever since I've been making a little bit of money, suddenly he's asking me questions. Like last week when he asked me whether or not our 5 daughters should go to school. This woman was so smart. She didn't say, please, can they go to school? She said, well, as you know, I have failed you because I've only borne you daughters. And you will have to work your whole life to pay for dowries for when they're 13 and 14 for them to be married off. But if we force them to go to school, like me, they'll learn a trade, they'll make money, and they'll take care of you in your old age. And the man looked at her and he said, you are right. We will force them to go to school. And we followed those girls for years. They finished primary school and what was unheard of, secondary school in Afghanistan. And that woman, who is illiterate, who will never leave her home, changed the course of a generation of her family by just becoming a little bit economically independent. And that's the power of inclusive growth. That's the power of what Mastercard is doing. And that's the power we hope that you'll find in the book of investing in a woman like Rangina, a woman like Reem Fauzi, women and men that work for you, because the greatest legacy at the end of the day is to ask yourself what the ambassador just said, what did you do to impact someone's life that helped change the world?
That brings it home so powerfully, Dina. This book is a masterpiece.
Thank you.
And you were inspirational. Thank you on behalf of Mastercard.
Thank you so much.
Terrific.